Broadcasting from the Any Hour Services podcast studios, I'm your host, Mike Wilson, and on this episode of In the House, we're going to be talking about tankless water heaters. Let's go. In the House is a podcast about the major systems in the house: electrical, plumbing, heating, and air conditioning. Each week, I'm joined by a panel of experts. We pick a topic and we discuss it in depth. It's meant to be informative and hopefully bring you some value. If you've heard the show before, thanks for coming back. Do us a favor, go and leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. It would really help us out to know what you think of the show. Like I mentioned before, we're going to be talking about tankless water heaters. I've got Dwayne and Scott with me today. They're part of the management team over the plumbers at Any Hour Services. And we've got a special guest with us, Mr. Gale Johnson. Welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me today.
Gale has been in the plumbing industry for over 20 years. He's been a commercial plumber. He's done new construction plumbing. He did 5 years of plumbing service work before moving to the wholesale side of the industry. Gale's been installing, repairing, and selling Noritz tankless water heaters for 17 years. And for the last 3.5 years, he's been working directly for Noritz tankless water heaters. Again, thanks for being here. I'm really excited about this episode. Tanklesses, seem to be really taking off in popularity. People are loving them. I know we're installing, a ton of them. But let's start. Actually, let's go with the beginning. Dwayne, do you have some history on tankless water heaters?
I do. I looked some stuff up. Is some controversy on how it exactly started. And who started it a little bit.
Controversy.
We've talked before about that Edmund Rudd was the first guy that invented the water heater. Well, prior to him, there was a guy named Benjamin Waddy.
Ooh. And
he was a painter in England. And he actually invented the first water heater that heated water as it went through, as they did it. He didn't have any venting or anything on it, so it wasn't very safe.
Sure.
And there were some explosions and things, but he was the first one. And then Rudd took his patent and bought his patent, and then and then developed the water heaters as we know them today. During the late 1800s, things really started progressing as kerosene and other gases, other gases became available and readily available, and it created a great consistency that you didn't have before with wood or with coal, where you're constantly having to stoke the fires and things. So that created some other things. Where'd that go? Dang it. In 1929, Stiebel Eltron invented the first electric tankless water heater, instantaneous water heater. And they're still around today. That's still a company that...
What was the name of it?
Stiebel
Eltron.
Stiebel?
Yeah.
Is that Stiebel? I've always said it's Stiebel. Eltron.
You've always been wrong.
But depending on where.
Well, they're out of Germany, so it could be either way.
There you go.
Anyway, then it kind of just rolled along. They weren't very efficient and things. And then in the 70s, Europe needed more efficient ways because fuel costs were so high. They started the tankless revolution in the 70s. And so it spread throughout Europe and then went to Japan and Asia and South America. And if you travel anywhere in the world, everywhere else, they all have tankless water heaters, instantaneous, on demand. We'll go over some names right now. We refer to them as instantaneous, as continuous flow, inline, flash, on demand, instant on. Those are some of the terms we hear that are kind of all interchangeable for a tankless.
So I want to stop you there, because in my mind, when I think of on demand, you turn the spigot on, the hot spigot, and hot water is right there immediately. And even with a tanked water heater and a tankless, you still have to wait for the hot water to arrive, right? Because you turn it on and it starts creating hot water, and then the hot water is there. It's not right there at the tap, right?
Well, yeah, but the on-demand also refers to the fact that it's not using any energy until you turn it on. So a tank water heater is still using energy with the pilot light, and reheating and maintaining.
Well, I guess that when you define things differently, then yes, I guess that means it would fit into that. But I never realized that that's what that
on demand in
meant.
your mind is just
That
I
it's-
open up the faucet and I got hot water right there.
Because I
right
know
now.
they've got those, things that you can install underneath the sink, an Insta Heat where it makes it so you turn it on and you've got water right there. So I know that's a good way to define it, though. On demand, meaning that it's not using energy until it's demanding for that hot water. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other history stuff you want to go over?
That's about it. I mean, other than they're getting more and more efficient, they're getting more and more popular, that kind of a thing. So.
Okay. So before we go much further and really start to dive deep in this, Scott, tell us some of the basics, just in general. How does a tankless water heater work, and how is it different than a tanked water heater? And I would assume that most people still have I'm assuming we're not so many tanklesses yet that most people have a tankless. So how is tanked versus tankless? How does a tankless work?
Yeah, one of the main differences between a tank water heater and a tankless water heater is that a tank water heater stores water and heats it, and it's constantly in the tank. Whereas a tankless water heater, as soon as you call for water or turn a faucet on, the water flows through the unit and heats it and gives it to you. So it's not storing any water. It's also burning at a lot hotter temperatures, so it heats it quicker. That's one of the other benefits of having a tankless water heater, is just so that you get that hot water quicker, and you never run out of hot water. As long as you have that faucet on, water will continue to go through the unit and heat it up, and so you never run out.
I switched to a tankless water heater probably 10, 12 years ago. I don't know. It's been so long, or maybe that's not that long, but I've had one for a long time, and I love it. We were having issues we had young kids at the time. We had just moved in this house, and I think it had a 30-gallon electric water heater. It was a really old house, and that's what we had. But what would happen was our kids would get in the tub. They'd turn the tub on and fill it up, to take a bath or whatever, and it would run out of hot water trying to fill up the tub. Or if you tried to, get something after that, as soon as we put in a tankless water heater, problem solved. All of, everything. I love it. If it's one of those, so much so that if I moved into a new house, that would be I would consider that a bonus if they had a tankless water heater installed, or if they didn't and that tanked water heater was getting close to the end of its life, I would definitely make that upgrade to a tankless. If now that I've had it, going back to not, I wouldn't necessarily like it.
And I think that's the key feature, of it, is just the never-ending hot water. That's what sells me on it. I've had them for 20 years now in my homes.
So, to me, it feels like, you mentioned back in the 70s, they started doing tankless water heaters over in Europe, and it goes to Asia and all these other places, and then it winds up in the United States. It does feel like they are getting more popular, that they are, it's something that people are starting to request information on. But Gail, do you have any stats on the market penetration as far as tanklesses go?
Yeah. So in the United States, tankless is about 5-6% of the total market.
Okay.
But over the last 7 years, tankless has really started to grow a lot. They're growing 20 to 25% every single year. You're starting to see a lot more builders shifting over to putting tankless water heaters in as a standard. So a lot of these new homes that are coming out are now have tankless water heaters in them, and we're going to see that progression really going. There's a lot of incentives for these builders to put in these higher efficiency appliances to make those homes more green. They have what they call HERS ratings, try to get these points down to make it as most energy efficient as possible in every single house that they're building right now. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of incentives out there for them to move to that better technology. And people right now too, if you're looking to go from a tank to a tankless, there's so many different rebates and things out there for the consumers to be able to go that way.
Cool. Well, we'll talk specifically about some of those things in just a little bit, but are there any applications where someone shouldn't install a tankless? Are there anywhere it won't work?
Real quick, just to step back, one of the things that's made them more popular now than they were even 10 years ago was that the venting had to be stainless steel venting, or it had, that's what it had to be. And the venting often cost a lot more than what you even paid for the tankless to buy. There were only 3 manufacturers. They colluded with each other, and they were all within a penny per foot of each other during those 80s and 90s when that was happening. And so
collusion. Are we're talking about collusion on the podcast?
They had to.
New title for the podcast: Tankless Collusion.
I'm sure they did. I was a contractor during the time.
Okay.
It was just like, it was, anyway.
Well, yeah, just like any technology, when it's coming along, I mean, as it progresses, it becomes, more affordable, and you start to get that technology, and it just gets better and better. And usually the beneficiaries are that end consumer because it's able to come down like that. Is that what you're? Yeah,
that, and then just the fact that with our computer age and 30 years ago, we had the brick, right? 30 years ago, we had the brick that we carried around.
The brick phone.
There's so much in these little phones here now, and the motherboards and the computers that they've got, and Gail can probably get into some of the details on how many, whatever calculations it's doing in, per second. And so we're able to really dial those in right now and make them so that they are very, very efficient and consistent.
So are there any applications where you can't install a tankless?
No, I can't think of any application you couldn't. I mean, we've got them in single family homes, large commercial buildings, using them for heat in large commercial buildings. People are putting them in their cabins because they're a lot easier to drain down and winterize, things like that. So I can't think of really anywhere where you wouldn't put in a tankless water heater.
Like we often say, there's no place you'd be able to do it anywhere you wanted, but there's always a cost associated with some of that.
Of course, yeah. I mean,
and so
that's ultimately what you're looking for when you're getting a bid on these things is like, what's it going to take to put this thing in? And then, it's up to you to make those decisions on where you're at, if you can afford that. But let's go into pros and cons of a tankless water heater, because just like anything else, there are pros and there's cons for all of the benefits. Let's talk about some of the trade-offs, but let's talk about the benefits first. One of the biggest ones, and my favorite, is the endless hot water. We already talked about, on demand, so all of these different names for us, but being able to have as much hot water as you want when you want it, right?
Oh yeah.
Another pro, costs less to operate. How much less does it? I mean, is it one of those things where, when electric cars came out, they talk about like, oh, it costs so much less to operate an electric car, and there were people that were like, oh, but when you do the math, it's not enough to like pay for it. Is it one of those things where it costs less to operate, but it doesn't pay for itself? Or is it one of those things where people are out there selling it, saying that it costs so little to operate that it pays for itself? Like, talk to me about the cost savings on it.
Well, it's about just total gas savings. You're about 60% less than what you currently are using on a tank.
Okay.
So, but heating hot water isn't that expensive. So, I mean, you could save, just depends on how large a family you have. So like my house, my gas bill went from, in the summertime, from $12 to $13 a month down to $7 a month. Mm. So, I mean, I cut that down pretty close there. But if you have a larger family, that's one thing with tankless is you're going to start saving money on that gas bill, but then everybody realizes that you have endless hot water.
They can go for as long as they want.
So then they start. And that's what I was going to bring up. Was
so then
that fact there that people always, a year later, they say, I thought you said I'd save on my gas bill. Yeah. And then we find that because they make the lifestyle changes of hurry, quick, get done,
right?
And then somebody else has to jump in, and then the third guy gets the cold shower, on Sunday mornings. Anyway. I'm
not gonna lie, my showers are a little longer in the winter.
They are. It just kind of happens that way.
Oh, for sure.
But there is a definite cost savings there because you're only using you're only using gas when the unit is running. Mm-hmm. Other than that, it's just staying stagnant and just sitting there until you use hot water.
And that's where the biggest cost savings come from, is that you're not paying to heat this 50-gallon tank of water 24/7. It's like, how much would it cost to keep a swimming pool hot all the time, right? Because of all that heat loss, a tanked water heater on a much smaller scale, it's like keeping this big, huge body of water warm. It's much more energy efficient to not do that and just heat it when you need it. Yeah. Heat it when you need it.
I like that.
Heat it when you need it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a thing.
Have Noritz get at me. I'll license that to him.
All righty. Perfect.
Okay. Let's see. Longer warranties. So, or the product lasts longer. Let's actually dive into this one a little bit because, how long should a tankless water heater last? Or actually, no, before you do that, tell me what's the difference, because longer warranties is the benefit there. What's the difference in a warranty on a tanked water heater versus a tankless water heater?
So with a tank water heater, your warranty is usually 6 years.
Okay.
You can buy extensions. It'll take you out to like 10, somewhere
But
around
manufacturers,
there.
they'll go
Manufacturer's warranty
6 years.
is 6 years.
Okay.
With our tankless water heaters, our largest warranty is 25 years. And then our units that we have recirculation and everything through are 15 years.
And that's for the heat exchanger.
That's for the heat exchanger itself. So,
And that's the same thing the 6-year for on the regular water heater is for the tank.
yeah. So we look at it as our unit should last 25 to 30 years with proper maintenance. So as long as you're maintaining that water heater, it should last you 25 to 30 years.
So 25 to 30 years. So you'd mentioned two different warranties, a 15 and a 25 year. What was the difference in those? Is that the same piece of equipment, like the same tank unit or tankless unit? And one has what's for the difference in the warranty?
Well, one of them has a recirculation pump.
Okay.
So you are recirculating, keeping that hot water line hot all the time. So it's adding more wear and tear to that unit. You're using it more. And so that's why it only has a 15-year warranty, where if you do not have that recirculation pump, then it's a 25-year warranty because you're not adding any type of recirc to that.
Gotcha.
So that's where those two different warranties come from. So if you are going to have recirc, it's a 15-year warranty, but we expect it to last 20 to 25 years with proper maintenance on it.
So recirc, so a recirculation pump built into it. For those that might not know what that is or why that's important, talk to me about what a recirculation pump does, Scott.
Yeah. So you'd mentioned a little bit ago about having hot water on demand. You turn on the faucet and it's right there. This is how you accomplish this with a tankless water heater. So you have this loop that's constantly going through your hot water pipes. And so as soon as you turn on that fixture, within a couple of seconds, you have hot water.
Gotcha.
So that's the way it works. And because it's constantly cycling and having to stay hot, obviously it's working. And that's like why the warranty is less.
Gotcha.
And that's for a whole home piped system where you can create a loop. Gail, do you want to talk about the other crossover?
Yeah, so with our NRCR series that we just came out with in February, we have what you call a crossover T. So you would choose the furthest fixture in the house, and you would put this little T that connects the hot and the cold underneath the sink. So if you don't have one of those dedicated recirc lines, you're not out of luck. You can add this crossover T that actually recirculates that hot water back through the cold line, back to the unit, and then back through the hot line. So it's creating a loop inside of that house, so you can keep that hot line warm all the time.
If you have a system where you've got like a manifold installed where like this was done at my house because I liked the ability to be able to shut off each individual line. And so I've got everything going to a manifold first. When it does that, are you having to put one of those T's at each location, or or is it that the water is, how would you set up some type of recirc on that?
Well, with a mana block system, it's kind of hard to get that. So if you're looking for it to just be at your, say in your master bath, and I mean, you could set that up kind of at the block, but you still have to purge that line that goes all the way to your shower.
That's what I'm thinking.
The inherent advantage of a mana block system is that your water gets there so much quicker because it's a smaller pipe feeding an individual faucet. So your overall benefit is, that's the benefit of the mana block system.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get hot water, relatively quickly,
right,
and I don't have like that situation where they're all connected throughout the house. But now this is where the show turns into entirely just for me. But I was curious. Fair enough. I'm the host. I mean, you're going to answer my questions. So I was curious there because this is jumping a little bit ahead. I'll save it for when we get there. We'll come back to it.
We can always go into, if Ricky were here, he would say, "Well, Mike, I think you just need to have me come over and look at your house."
That's true. That's true. He would say that. He has not made it to my house yet. Okay, so Okay, we talked about the warranties. You talked about doing maintenance, and there's some stipulations in order to get that warranty. You wanted to talk a little bit about water quality and how that plays in. So what are the things that someone has to do in order to get the maximum warranties on those? You talked about having the maintenance done. What else is there?
Well, yeah. Why don't you go ahead and talk about what your company needs for the warranty? And this is typical for any.
Yeah. So for most tankless water heater companies, any kind of hard water that's going through that system if there is hard water going through that system, it needs to be maintained, needs to be flushed, cleaned out every single year.
So and hard is considered any grains per gallon over 5.
Okay. So does that mean, because I know with our tanklesses that we install, when we install a Noritz, we are giving an option and recommending that they install a water softener or some type of conditioning with it. So do you, in order to get that 25-year, is it you maintain it or do the water treatment, or you have to do both? Like, what's required there?
So anything through our warranty, anything that's 7 grains or hardness or lower is, we don't require filtration. We just recommend that they flush it once per year. Got it. Anything over 7 grains of hardness, we require through our warranty to have some sort of filtration, whether it's a like a silliphos or tripolyphosphate or a water softener, something that's physically treating that hard water mineral so it's not sticking to anything in your plumbing system.
Gotcha. Let's see. We talked about the energy efficiency. Sorry, we're still on pros here. So more energy efficient. We covered that. Takes up less space. Is that something that a lot of people like?
Oh yes, very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know for me, I had a small unfinished basement, and we had this tanked water heater that was in the corner. And when we put in the tankless, because we were the tanked one was just so expensive running a 30-gallon electric water heater. We put in this tankless, and we were able to free up a lot of space and then finish our basement and put in, because it was a small one to begin with, but I really liked the space savings that we got from that as well. Any other pros that you guys can think of before we...
there's always the potential for less water damage, for the fact that when you've got a 50-gallon tank and it ruptures,
that's true. The
tends
flood
to go
damage.
all over. And here in Utah, we're all in basements, and it seems like nobody knows how to pour a basement floor to go to the floor drain that's 3 feet away. It always tends to go to the opposite, the hallway, the bedrooms, the living rooms, and damaged carpet and drywall. And I don't know why that is. It's just Murphy's Law here in Utah, but that's what we see.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to that point, the contrast, even if it was sloped properly, you get 50 gallons that just go out all at once. I don't know of a drain that can handle all of that. And so you don't have that situation with a tankless, because you don't have 50 gallons of water just sitting there waiting.
Right. And typically what happens is that if it does develop a leak inside, from what we've seen, it drips down on the controls and you don't get hot water. And because you don't have 2 or 3 days of running out of a tank full of hot water, you know immediately that there's a problem. So you go down and oh, hey, there's a problem.
Yeah. And the tankless only holds about a liter and a half of water inside of the heat exchangers at one time. So if there is a leak, it's a small drip, and then it just, like Dwayne says, gets on the components. You don't have hot water, you go down and check, and you might see the drip coming out of the bottom of the tankless, but it's not flooding everywhere inside the house.
Gotcha. So for all of the pros, let's talk about some of the trade-offs that you have there. One of the ones that you can, one of them is limited flow rate, because coming out of the tankless, and this is where you correct me if I'm wrong, this is just my understanding, you've got a sensor in the tankless that guarantees that you're going to get a certain temperature of water constantly coming out there of the tankless. But if you start opening up a bunch of faucets around the house, it's still going to guarantee that water is the right temperature, but it may not be able to keep up with all of the demand. And that's why it's so important to size the unit properly, or to come in and make sure that the thing, because that's not, if you've got a system that can't keep up with your water needs, that's not the tankless's fault. That's more of, in my opinion, that's an installation issue. Would you guys agree with that?
Oh yes, definitely.
Yeah. So make sure that when someone comes in, if you've got a house that is requiring 2 or 50-gallon water tanks, make sure that a plumber is coming out there and doing an evaluation, and you're talking to them about how you use your home, how much water, or how often you're opening multiple faucets and things like that. What are some other cons that you guys, or not cons, some trade-offs that you guys come across out there in the field that you talk to people about?
Well, a lot of people, like in the past, would have issues with cold water sandwich.
Okay.
Which cold water sandwich kind of explained as someone's turned on the faucet or turned in the shower and they've showered, then they shut the water off. Mm-hmm. And then like 5 minutes later, somebody comes in, turns the shower back on. Well, you've got all this hot water that's in the line. And then in the past, it would take 30 to 50 seconds for that tankless to get fired back up and get going again. Mm-hmm. And so you'd have this small section of water that was cold that was still leaving that unit. So they would jump in the shower and be like, oh, this water is warm. And then all of a sudden they would get a cold shot and then it would go warm again. With the new technology that we have within our units, we've eliminated that cold water sandwich issue.
Is that the recirc that you were talking about, or what is that?
No, that's into the heat exchangers themselves and how they operate and how fast they can get water to temperature.
That circuitry that's in there that we talked about is just so much faster that it just can go back and forth so quickly.
Gotcha.
And modulate.
So back in the day, I mean, you could have been 40 to 50 seconds before the unit was actually delivering 120 degree water.
Gotcha.
With our new NRCR unit, you're 12 seconds.
Gotcha.
And if they've been using the unit, that heat exchanger stays hot to a point to where it can still exchange. So if you turned off a faucet, waited 5 minutes, turned it back on, that heat exchanger is still hot enough to exchange, and it'll start keeping exchanging and going. Is it
a common practice? Because I know that one of the things to help with efficiency is that and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Noritz, it'll preheat the water with those exhaust temperatures before it actually exhausts stuff. So you're like trying to preheat the water before it actually gets to the heat exchanger. Is that something that yours does?
Yeah. So our units are all condensing units, meaning that it has 2 separate heat exchangers. It has a primary and a secondary. So with that secondary heat exchanger, we're using the flue gases of the unit to preheat that water before it goes into the primary heat exchanger. So that way our stack temperatures are very, very low, anywhere from 100 to 130 degrees leaving the unit, where if you're using a non-condensing unit, it could be 400, 500 degree flue gases. That's why they needed that stainless steel back in the days, because
versus now PVC.
Yeah, those fluid temperatures were so hot coming out, where now, like when it comes out of that unit and it's going out the side of the house or it's going up the roof or however you have it vented out, I mean, you can put your hand right in front of it and it's cool coming out of the house.
And it's zero clearance now with the PVC. It used to be with the stainless that you had to have 12 inches of clearance to combustibles. And so it just made it very hard to retrofit anything to get 12 inches in a joist bay and different things. You just really couldn't do it.
Gotcha.
And so that's been since what, about 2008, 2009?
Yeah, 2008, 2009 is when a lot of the condensing really started coming out.
Taking off.
I mean, that's probably 95% of the sales.
Gotcha.
Is the condensing units.
While we're on, this is where I was going to go a little bit earlier, but I decided to wait for here. So do you have an issue with like high efficiency washing machines or dishwashers where it has issue getting hot enough water there in the beginning because of, at my house, the high efficiency washing machine, it like, you turn it on and it'll like spit some water out to like kind of get things going, and then it doesn't like just flood it like it used to, the old not efficient ones. And so what we were having an issue with is that even when you chose a hot cycle on the washing machine, it wasn't getting like that 130, 140 degree or 120, whatever you have your thermostat set on the tankless, it wasn't getting that temperature there because it wasn't running long enough to like get all that. Is that an issue that people have, or is that just a weird thing at my house?
No, that's an issue that's even with a tank water heater, you're still going to have that issue, because that line that goes from your washer all the way back is still, if you haven't used hot water in the house, that line's going to be cold. So you have to purge that line of that cold water to get that hot water there. One thing that we've seen a lot of people doing in that side is when they are going to use their washer, they'll go to the bathroom that's adjacent to it, run the faucet till the water's hot, then turn on that high efficiency washer, or
And that's what I do in my home.
yeah. But I've also seen put some small little point of use tankless, like a little Emax water heater or something like that. I mean, it's quite expensive just to add that for that purpose when you could just turn on a faucet and let it run. But I mean, it's tank or tankless. You're still going to have that issue because you have to purge that whole line to get it there.
That's interesting because that's what we would do is we would go and we'd turn the faucet on in the kitchen so that the tankless was already fired up. But having that manifold system, like we would still have that water that was in you got hot water right there at the manifold, but then that line going to the washing machine, you still have it. And me being a bit of a redneck and, my house being one of Ricky's, plumbing dreams, I actually rigged up, this is confession time on the podcast, but I rigged up a system where
I can't wait to hear this.
Oh yeah.
I can't wait.
I rigged up some, I went to the hardware store, got some plumbing pipes, and I thought to myself, okay, well, how do I get hot water right there? So I rigged up some piping coming off of the hot water, from the outlet there, or the spigot at the dishwasher or the washing machine, and I plumbed it to where it was going directly into the washing machine. I put a valve so that I could then take that valve and run it into the drain line, and I could turn that valve on and it would give me hot water there immediately whenever I hit start on the thing. That's a great idea, right?
That is a great idea.
Unless your wife forgets to turn it off in the middle of the night and you run your tankless water heater all night long. So you can get as much hot water as you want, 8 hours if you would like to. I didn't find out. So I tried to tell my wife, like, okay, hey, don't forget. And it's not her fault. It was a new system, and it was redneck, So you'd have to turn it on, hit start, and then turn it off so you'd have it there. I wake up the next morning, and I go to, when you get a tankless, you can tell when you've got a bunch of fixtures opened up in the house, because I'd figured out that, the hot water pressure would be a little bit lower. I go to take a shower, and I was like, I was the only one awake because it was early, and I was like, man, this is really weird. And my mind immediately went to like, oh no, I wonder. So I get done with my shower. I still had plenty of hot water at the shower as well, but I get out of the shower, I go upstairs, and sure enough, that thing was cranked full blast, hot water just draining into the drain tube. And I was just like, ugh. So, I go downstairs, and I was like, hey babe, did you do laundry last night? Seeing if she'd like pick up. She's like, yeah. I was like, did you forget to turn the thing off? She's like, oh, did I? Anyway, so it was funny. I think a couple weeks later, we got one of those notes from the city that's like, you use 30% more water than your neighbors do. And I was like, tell me about it. Anyway, so that we eventually like got rid of that particular system.
I think that's actually very ingenious, though. That's a really good.
Oh, yeah.
It was a very good solution, and she got better at like shutting the thing off.
I forget to turn the faucet off. My wife's always having to go in and turn the faucet off that I leave on and walk away. But
there you go. But yeah, so that was the only like drawback that I had with that tankless, is that it felt like it wouldn't happen. But that's good that that's a normal thing that you'd have to think of. So does a recirc with that little recirc system, does that fix that problem?
Yes, that would fix that, as long as you don't have a mana block like you have.
Sure,
in your house.
It wouldn't fix it for me.
For you, it wouldn't. But any regularly plumbed house, that would fix that issue.
Okay, so just be aware of that, and when you're talking to the plumber, let them know that you've got high efficiency appliances, which most people do nowadays, right?
The just real quick on that,
Yep.
The dishwashers we kind of have the same issue with sometimes, but years ago the dishwasher started now putting in a heating element, and so whatever temperature it says that whether it's low water save or high wash or high temp or whatever buttons you have pushed, it's going to tell the dishwasher, I'm going to make the water this hot. And that little heating element down in the bottom heats that water up. A lot of the brand new, last 2 years or 3 years, the high efficiency washing machines they have a steam feature to that. And they also have an element in there so that it is going to overcome that. If you have the cold water and you're supposed to be on warm, it's going to heat that element up and heat the water up until it gets to the temperatures that the different buttons tell it it's going to do, just like our dishwashers have been doing
Gotcha.
for quite a while.
Another another trade-off that you have there is that, with all of the energy savings and the endless hot water, tankless water heaters, they do cost more than a regular tanked water heater. But you had mentioned earlier, Gail, that there are some incentives and things to help overcome some of that initial cost. What are some of the incentives that are available for people that are wanting to upgrade from a tank to a tankless water heater?
Yeah, so there is through Dominion, the gas company, there's a $300 rebate on that. So when you install that tankless water heater, there's a form you go out and fill out online. That check takes 6 to 8 weeks to get to you. And when they say it takes 6 to 8 weeks, it does take 6 to 8 weeks to get to you.
Yep.
But our units all qualify for the $300 federal tax credit as well. So that tax credit would be something that you would claim on your taxes for the end of 2020 when you're doing your taxes next year. And that is a true $300 credit to your taxes. So if at the end of the year you owed $0 in taxes, you would get $300 back.
Nice.
I'm not sure if this will air before 1st of July, but they could still actually claim their 2019 credits if they haven't done their taxes yet.
Yeah, if they haven't done their taxes yet, they can still claim it in 2019. If they had it installed in 2019 and they didn't claim it in this tax season, then they can claim it in the 2020 as well.
When does this air? Next week? All right, well, there you go. So if you're listening to this and it's not July yet, you can do whatever they just said.
And those typically take the Dominion one. You have to have a copy of your paid receipt.
Can you claim it each year? Can you do 2019 and 2020?
You can.
Really?
Whether it'll
300 a
work
year?
or not.
Trust the
You
audit.
can always try.
The audit will find you.
Oh yeah.
All right, sounds good. So for those listening, if you have Dominion as your gas company, you've got that $300 rebate that's available. If you are listening somewhere else in the country, maybe check with your gas company and see if they offer some type of rebate. And then for the federal tax credit, that is a credit. It's not necessarily a rebate, so it offsets your tax liability at the end of the year by $300. So,
well, if you have somebody that's listening that's out of state,
yep,
they can go to Noritz.com, click on rebates. They put in their zip code, and it'll give them their gas company rebates. The federal rebate shows what rebates are available in those areas.
Beauty.
Wow.
So Noritz.com. So Noritz.com. And is there a tab up at the top?
Tab up at the top just says rebates. You click on the rebates, and then you just put in your zip code, and it'll tell you what your
check it
rebates
out.
are.
That's a great database to have.
It is.
That's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
What was my tagline that I came up with earlier? Do you remember?
I remember. I'm not going to tell you, though. I mean,
I'll remember when I hear it. What was it?
I don't
remember.
You don't remember either?
No.
I don't remember.
Do you remember, Austin? Okay. Anyway, I was going to say it again because it was such a good tagline. What was it? Heat it and forget? No, it was
Set it and forget it.
No, that one's used.
Shake and bake, something like that.
Ricky Bobby. Now first, you last. Okay. Moving on. There's someone listening right now that remembers what it is, and they're yelling at their radio saying it was this. All right, let's move on. Any other trade-offs that you hear people talking about, or complaints, I guess, that people have with a tankless water heater? In my mind, there's so many more benefits, and as long as you go in with your eyes open and you know that these are the trade-offs, it's an easy decision for me anyway to make. But are there any other complaints?
It's just lifestyle changes. We talk about you might need to make some lifestyle changes. Same as if you get an electric vehicle and buy one, you're not going to go 0 to 60 unless you're spending $1 million, but you're not going to get 0 to 60 in 3.1 seconds. And so the tankless is one of the complaints we do hear quite a bit is that, it just takes so much longer for the water to get there. And we hear that all the time. And it's like,
that doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
The regular tank water heater was here,
right,
and it started flowing water. And then the tankless is in the same spot. Now, it may be a 3 to 4 second to get 0 to 60 there is the only difference it really should be. Because
a lot of those older tank water heaters, they don't have the thermal washers that are built into the top of it. So it's actually that heat that's generating in there for the next 6 feet down the line would actually kind of heat that water for about 6 feet.
Yeah.
And so they would get that
1 or 2 seconds of
1 or 2 But I mean, most of the homeowners that we talk to, and I go out on a ton of troubleshoots locally all the time, where homeowners are like, it takes so long to get here, and then we time it, and it's 20 seconds. And it's like, well, that's 20 seconds. Well, yeah, that's a long time. Well, when you had a tank water heater, how long was it? Well, it was probably like 15. Well, that's 5 seconds. And now you have endless hot water.
That, 2 feet of water more, kind of a thing in a pipe.
Yeah. Well, that's a really good thing for technicians to make sure that you're educating yourself on, don't just have blinders and be like, oh, it's just all of these good things and good things. Know the things that people are complaining about, and know that okay, well, the older ones used to do this. And so people might hear some of these, not myths, but hear people complaining about them, but the technology may be way further advanced that has solved those problems. Because when a manufacturer hears and sees consumers, complaining about things with their product, R&D jumps on those things and starts, figuring out ways to fix those things. And so I personally don't have those issues. So I probably, have a unit. I mean, listening to the way that you guys are talking about things and some of the technology that we'll talk about later on in the episode, mine doesn't have some of those things, but I don't experience a lot of the things that people, talk about there. The only issue that I ever had with my Tankless, but it wasn't the Tankless's fault. There's a dip switch inside where you have to adjust for elevation. And I don't know if this is still this way with newer water heaters, but there was a little switch that didn't get flipped on the install for the altitude. And so it would run and then the hot water would cut out. And I was like, oh, that's weird. And you could shut the water off and then turn it back on and it would start doing hot water again. But they came out and it was a simple fix, and I've never had an issue since then. But is that still something where you got to make sure that you are adjusting the dip switches right or whatever?
Yeah. So I mean, straight out of the box, that heater is set for, so if you're putting in the NRCR or the easy units, they're set for sea level and a short 2-inch vent run. Mm-hmm. You install it here and you don't flip those dip switches, it still thinks it's at sea level with a short 2-inch vent run when it's at 5,000 feet with 30 feet of 2-inch PVC, and it's a lot longer. So it's trying to operate as it's in one area when it's in a complete different other area. So you'll get error codes, things like that. But if it's installed properly, we have apps that the installers use where they just go in, put in what is in the install, and it tells them what dip switches they need to press.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Is yours written down? Because I might forget mine.
Well, go ahead.
So the only other, not complaint or con, but the other thing to know about a Tankless is that when the power goes out, you're not going to have hot water, right? Because it does require electricity, or at least that's what I've found with mine. Yeah. Even though you've got gas there, you're not going to have hot water if the power goes out.
But correct. You can use a battery backup.
Okay.
So just like you would for a computer. Those small little battery backups, you can have that plugged in. You have the unit plugged into that and then have that plugged into the wall, where it'll actually run the unit for 16 hours, 16 hours of burn time.
Wow.
Which you only, in a typical family of 4, you're maybe about an hour of burn time per day.
Unless you forget to turn the little nozzle off at the washer. Correct. And you sleep through the night.
But that little battery backup will run that unit for 16 hours.
Is that something that Noritz sells as an accessory to go with it, or you're just saying you need to go get one of those?
You can get one
backups
on Amazon or anywhere. Or
I might have to go get me one for.
Yeah,
that's a good.
So
point.
yeah, we had I've got a quadriplegic adult son at home, and he's got an air bed that rotates and pumps up and keeps him from getting bed sores and things. And we are in a private. We're not Rocky Mountain Power. We're in a private company. It seems to go out quite a bit. Mm-hmm. So he went and bought one of those that he plugs his bed into, so that it doesn't go deflate on him overnight and we're sweating. Is it gonna out bad?
Do you require a dedicated circuit for your Tanklesses?
No, we do not.
How much electricity or what kind of draw are you having on those?
It's about with it running full burn everything, it's about a 60-watt light bulb.
Oh wow!
I mean, it's awesome. Very, very low energy consumption. It's all DC. All the components, the motors, fans, everything in there is all DC.
That's cool. Dwayne, where were you going?
Yeah, back to another con. Just one of the things we have to deal with too is gas sizing and things.
Oh yeah,
we kind of wanted to get to that, and that is, it can be a con. I mean, can it be done? Yes, but there are some there's a potential for significant costs, because a regular tank water heater is about 40,000 BTU. and this is 5 times more at 199,000 BTUs. And so we might need to increase the gas sizing lines coming in, or change it to what they call a 2-pound system or a medium pressure system. And so there's some ways around it, but there are some costs associated with that.
You know, this is a second thing that came up where it's really important to make sure the thing is installed correctly. I was going to talk about this towards the end of the show, but let's actually just dive into this now. You know, can any plumber install a tankless? Like what is recommended when you're trying to get one, as far as like what you're looking for in somebody?
Well, there's certain parameters that you have to meet to be able to make sure that tankless water heater is going to work 100% in that house. So one is the flow rate. You know, if they've got 7 bathrooms and there's 7 showers in there, one tankless will still work in the house as long as you don't exceed 5 showers. If you have all 7 showers, it's going to just cut down that flow. So you want to size it for the house that it's going into. Like Dwayne was saying, with that gas, you need to have as much gas at the heater as required by the heater. Because if you don't, it's going to try to get there. And if it can't get there because there's not enough flow, it's going to shut down.
That's speaking of the amount of gas that you need in an equipment room. There's not, correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't usually have a dedicated gas line coming into the equipment room for each appliance, do you? Like, don't you usually have like a main feed coming into the equipment room, and then you've got your furnace and your water heater and things coming off of that? Or do you do a dedicated run for?
Well, it can be either. We see all kinds of different ways they pipe. Back in the day, they used to just bring it. They would run it right to every individual tee off wherever it needed to go.
Gotcha.
And hit those individual fixtures and things. And today, the current construction, you bring a 1-inch line into the mechanical room. Is our local codes here, and then that's enough to feed the furnace and a regular water heater and things. But there's all kinds of different gas systems out there, more than what we would want to go into.
But if you did have one line coming into your equipment room and it isn't necessarily sized for the tankless and your furnace, because the old water heater didn't require as much gas, you could. Doesn't the tankless, won't it prioritize, and it'll, like, you could starve out the furnace or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So it is important to make sure that, you know, that there are steps being taken. It's not just like, oh, you want to swap out your water heater? Cool, I can put in a tankless.
Slap it in there.
Right?
Yeah, because there will be a trade-off. And I'm worried with this, with them, you know, our tanklesses don't code out anymore that we install, because it is pulling the gas in. But I worry more what it might be doing if it's improperly sized to the furnace, which I think is a lot more dangerous and a lot more concerning to a homeowner, or to, you know, people in the home, for carbon monoxide and those kinds of things. And so it's just, it does need to be sized properly. And
so with
work.
that tankless water heater, the maximum is 199,000 BTUs, but the minimum is 18,000 BTUs. So it's a modulating burner. So it's only going to burn as much gas as it needs to heat the water that's going through it.
Gotcha.
So if you were only running 1 shower and it's 1 gallon per minute going through that unit, it might only fire at 60,000 BTUs.
Gotcha.
So you're going along and plugging along and everything's just fine with 1 shower. And if your gas line's undersized, you're not going to notice it there.
Gotcha.
But if you start doing 2 or 3 showers at the same time and it starts getting up to where that maximum BTU is when you start seeing those issues and those undersizing problems and things like that.
So as far as like, are there any type of requirements that a technician or a company that's going to, you know, represent, like for instance, Noritz, like what does Any Hour Services do to make sure that they are qualified to install Noritz tankless water heater? Like, can again, I go back to, because where I'm going to ultimately go with this is what kind of questions or what kind of communication how does a homeowner protect themselves from spending a lot of money on a tankless water heater and then having it not work properly? How do they avoid somebody that doesn't know what they're doing?
So we have 3 different trainings that we do. We have level 1, level 2, and level 3 trainings that we do for all of our contractors that are installing for us. And so they have to go through these classes to become a certified installer. So, I mean, like on our website, you can go and find an installer and it has all certified installer. So anybody who's looking to have a tankless installed needs to make sure that that person that's installing it knows what they're doing.
Gotcha.
So you don't want to have somebody coming in that doesn't do it all the time, because they might not install it correctly.
Gotcha.
So you want to have that unit installed correctly and have a company do it for you that is certified to do it.
So there's the certification to make sure that you have the training and the support from the factory to know here's the proper way to do this. But then you also mentioned experience. The more you do something, the better you get at it. The more little things that the dip switches and the venting and the gas sizing and all of those different things. Dwayne, how many tanklesses do we install compared to the average plumber?
Yeah, we're currently installing several hundred a year, and that's how popular they're becoming and things.
So I mean, we definitely have a ton of experience, and with all of those installs, you get faster at being able to do the installs. You know all of the little tricks that you have to do, and you had mentioned there you can go to a manufacturer's website and find out if a company is certified. Is that still just Noritz.com, and it's a different tab to find?
Yeah, you can go to Noritz.com and click on Find an Installer, and then you type in your zip code, and it'll give you all the installers in that area. And you'll see little badges on there where it'll say like residential, commercial, certified, all those different things that are on there.
So let's talk about, because you had mentioned earlier about the warranties. You had mentioned maintenance. So if someone has a tankless water heater, what kind of maintenance should they be doing to the system?
So they need to flush. By flushing it, you're putting a solution through the heat exchangers to physically clean those out. So if you're doing it on a regular basis, food grade vinegar, just regular white vinegar, pumping that through that system for an hour is going to clean any scale buildup that's inside there. So what we're just trying to do is get that scale buildup that's inside of that heat exchanger out of there so it can operate efficiently as possible. Because through every single one of those heat exchangers, we have thermistors that are measuring the temperature of that water in different sections. So from point A to point B, so this is how smart these units are. Is if you have, say, a gallon a minute coming through there from point A to point B, we should be, say, 80 degrees here to point B, we should be 89. But as that starts to scale up, that temperature is going to start changing, so it's going to have to burn even hotter. But then as it burns hotter, it's going to heat up that scale, which then the kind of overheat and do different things. So that scale can really damage either a tank or a tankless water heater. Scale is what really kills water heaters. So
scale is that mineral buildup, in a tanked water heater. It usually settles down at the bottom, but on a tankless, it'll build up inside the heat exchanger. So besides flushing the tankless once a year, is there anything else that you have to do to it?
So while they are flushing that, you're checking the incoming combustion air that's coming in, make sure that's clear. There's no wasps or bird nests or anything blocking that incoming combustion air.
So that's just out at wherever it vents out of the house, right? You're just inspecting that.
So
and
there
making
and
sure.
at the unit too, like we have stainless steel screens on our newer units where the combustion air is coming in. So you just pull that screen out, clean it out, throw it back in. You can, on the units themselves where the cold water comes in, there's an inlet filter there that's blocking anything that's coming into there so it doesn't go through the water heater and into your house. That's something that the installers usually pull out, clean out, put back in. So there are a few other steps that they do while they're there to just make sure the unit's running 100%.
Are those things all listed in the owner's manual?
Yes.
Okay, so if someone was going to try and tackle that themselves, those things are. Is there anything that they that if someone was handy and was able to do those things, is there anything that if you try and do that as a homeowner, does that void any type of warranty? Like, do you have to have a plumber come out and do that, or can you try and do that stuff yourself?
You could try do it yourself. There's videos online and all those different things where you can try and do it yourself. But having a licensed contractor coming out who knows what they're doing, who knows what to check and what to look for, is a lot more ideal for that.
Yeah,
because there is a certain procedure to flush our water heaters, and so if you don't do it the correct way, it's not going to register that on our unit. So that's one thing about our units is they're very, very smart. So when you put that into flush mode, it's going to make you flush it correctly until it gets to the end, and then it'll actually register on the board when that unit was flushed.
So you're recording the maintenance
Yes.
Internally.
So it's recording the maintenance on the, so in say 7-10 years down the line, you're calling tech support because you're having an issue or a problem. Our tech support can actually look to
I
make
flush
sure.
it every year.
Yeah. So they say, oh yeah, I flush that thing every year. And then they go to the maintenance monitors and look at it and go, it's never been flushed.
Does every tankless do that? I need to know because okay, I haven't done it every year. Okay, so well, and for any other homeowners listening, that unless you have like a recirc pump, to do that, like that's the biggest thing with mine. When I went to flush mine, I had to go and buy a recirc pump to actually get it to do that, to flush that solution through. But okay, so flushing it, checking all of those other things, obviously, refer to the owner's manual for a complete list of those things. Or if, I guess that's another advantage for having the maintenance done by a plumber. Do you recommend going with a certified installer, or is there another certification where it's like there's certified maintenance people?
Well, there's certified maintenance people, certified installers. But if you're a certified installer, you're still trained through all that maintenance and everything as well. So if you're an installer, you're a maintenance person as well. There's some people that just focus on just maintaining, they don't install, or people that just install and they don't do maintenance.
Gotcha.
So it just really depends on, who you want to have.
No, I get it. I'm just trying to think from a consumer standpoint how they go about picking the right person, because with all of that stuff that we talked about, like needing to have the experience and knowing all of those things, it would be very easy for a homeowner to just assume that any plumber is going to know how to do that. And the plumber is not going to show up and be like, I don't know how to do that. I got to, I'm just going to flush it and run this thing through. And if they don't know they need to check all of those other things, they're not going to, I don't know. When it comes to sometimes technicians,
they are a little high tech. I mean, these tanklesses are becoming more high tech. And
well, not only that, but like sometimes, technicians, they think that they know everything. And I've talked to a few, and I'm like, that's not what this says. And they're like, oh no, you don't have to do all of that. Oh no, I've been doing this for 80 years, and you don't have to do that.
Well, if you look at it like this, if you own a Lamborghini, do you want a Ford mechanic working on your Lamborghini? He's a trained professional to work on a vehicle, but he doesn't know that Lamborghini like a Lamborghini maintenance person does.
Yeah, see, and that's the thing is like out in the world though, like you've got so many shops that are just like, and there are people that think that like, oh, a water heater is like a car. I just take a car to the mechanic. And I would say probably the more you start, if you were spending Lamborghini money on a Lamborghini, yeah, you're probably going to take it to the Lamborghini dealership and have it worked on. But like, I think the average person, they don't go to the dealer to have the oil change done, so it's one of those things where we just need to, yes, I get what you're saying with that analogy, but there are a lot of people out there that are like, I'm going to get this stuff done for as cheap as possible wherever I can get it, and not necessarily go to somebody that's from the factory, because they, in their mind, they're like, I just want to save as many of those dollars as I can. And so what I'm really trying to do is just educate people that like, you want to think about having somebody that knows what they're doing do that. Can you like go and have somebody that doesn't know what they're doing? Yeah, they can come out there and pretend like they know what they're doing. But are you getting the benefits that come from actually having the maintenance done? Because if you're doing the maintenance, I'm assuming you're doing it because you want the system to last longer and perform as well as it could. You're cutting yourself short if you're not doing that stuff right.
Correct.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think Mike too, on when we're talking about qualified people, we need to have that conversation, and I don't think we quite covered it enough, but on flow rates and things, and how to, it is definitely a bigger learning curve on those, and the technicians need to be able to have that conversation with the homeowner. And if they don't have that conversation with you on what are your lifestyles, do you have a large jetted tub that you're trying to fill? Why here in Utah we find many of the larger homes have 240 or 250 gallon water heaters down in the basement, and what's your usage, or how many kids at home, how many teenagers, are they girls? Because that's going to involve all your usage, and how many showers do we take at the same time, and that kind of a thing. And there's, even though most of the tanklesses are around 10 or 11 gallon per minute flow rating, and it's easy to say, oh yeah, that's plenty, that's a lot. But our cold water coming in contributes to that, and we call it temperature degree rise, and how far, how high do we go up, and how high do we need it to go to hit a certain temperature. And so we have to, and there's charts out there that show that, and it's just really important that kind of gets managed, or you just understand that, hey, if mama's time is from 7:30 to 8 and she fills up the jetted tub and closes the door, and it's dad's job to take care of this, the 4 screaming kids, then and one of the kids wants to go and shower, it could cause some problems on a high flow faucet trying to get a shower done at the same time.
Gotcha.
So
are there any other technical things? Like what are some of the other technical things when you are trying to, from a technician standpoint, you're going into a home, what are the technical things that you need to be aware of that you're looking for?
Combustion air is another one. And so when we have flame, there needs to be enough oxygen being able to replenish that small room that is most of the mechanical rooms. There needs to be air replenishing what's being burned because the oxygen is being used up. And so they call it a fresh air return, or combustion air coming in from the outside or other locations, or utilizing the house and the size of the house and those kinds of things. And there's charts and tables and everything that people get certified in to be able to do all that, as journeyman plumbers know how to do that, and heating and air technicians, when they become here we call it the Rocky Mountain Gas Association certification. When that happens, then they receive the knowledge on how to use the charts and figure all that out. But you have to be able to replenish that air, and so sometimes, and because there's more BTUs and more energy and more gas being used, we need more fresh air coming in.
Yeah, it sounds very similar to sizing HVAC equipment for the home, and for years I've said, HVAC equipment isn't rocket science, but it is science, and there are the laws of physics that go into play.
Size, length of run, how far, how small, how big,
and so knowing all of those things is really important. Okay, before we move on to the next topic, anything else? Because we're getting ready to kind of wrap up the show. I'm going to end with features of Tankless, that like new technology and stuff. But anything else that we've gone over that we want to go back to, or that we missed?
One thing I wanted to kind of touch on was the efficiency ratings.
Yes.
Of tankless versus tank. Yeah. So like our units are 97 to 98% efficient, which a lot of people are like, well, that sounds great, but what does that mean?
Okay.
So that efficiency basically means if it's 98% efficient, every dollar you're spending in gas, 98 cents is actually heating the water and 2 cents is going out the flue. Where with a tank water heater, they're anywhere from 60% to 62%.
Is that even with the new regulations and things that they're requiring?
Yeah, they're a 0.64 or 0.65 UEF rating, which our units are a 0.97 UEF rating.
That's
so
huge.
That equates to 65% or 60% versus 90%.
And that's when they're new.
Yeah.
As soon as water heaters, as soon as they start building up scale, they go down radically. One advantage to the tankless is there are settings on there that it'll let you know when it's time for maintenance.
Yeah.
Is that one of the things that your tankless records as well, is how efficient it's being?
It doesn't record how efficient it's being, but you can look while it's going and go through the different maintenance monitors to see how efficient things are working inside the unit. So I can actually go in and see what the incoming water temperature is, what the outgoing water temperature is, what the BTUs are, and I can look at that and I can do that math to say, okay, that's where it's supposed to be, or that's not where it's supposed to be.
And that's one of the ways we troubleshoot, is looking at those parameters and trying to figure out, okay, so what's causing it? Is it, the gas sizing? Is it built up in the inside? Is there more maintenance that needs to be done deeper in and get deeper into it?
Yeah, that's a great point with the efficiency thing. It's a way, I love explaining efficiency that way. I do it a lot with with the furnaces and things when I'm talking on the radio. But being able to explain that that percentage of how efficient it is, that means that's how like what percentage of your money is actually, being spent on heating the home. Whatever's left over is you're just flushing that money. And so to know that for every $1 that you spend heating your home with a tankless, 2 cents is not going to heat it versus a tank water heater, 35, 40, 45 cents, like you're just wasting that money, and that adds up over time.
Oh yeah.
So anyway, okay. So let's say that someone's listened and they're like, okay, cool. I want to get a tankless. With most things that you buy, there are accessories and different things that are available. I know Noritz has some really awesome things in the technology. Let's talk about when someone's getting a tankless, if they had a wish list and they could be like, okay, I want like the coolest tankless I can get. Let's talk about some things that are available with tankless water heaters.
Yeah, so with our NRCR units, which is Noritz Residential Condensing Recirc.
Oh, it means something.
Yes. So
acronym.
our all of our numbers always mean something on that side. But that NRCR is going to allow you to turn any home into a Recirc home.
Okay.
Like we were talking before with the minimum and the maximum BTUs, we actually have a built-in system that is our super low BTU control mode. So when you are recircing with most tankless water heaters, it's going to recirc. You're trying to get to 120, but that water's coming back hotter.
Gotcha. So you're going to use less energy.
So it's going to we can modulate down to about 4,000 to 5,000 BTUs.
Wow.
So we can keep that water as hot as possible going through that unit, where a lot of other manufacturers, they're going to shut down and they're having to wait a lot longer for that temperature to drop before they can exchange again.
That's cool, because when you were talking about like, oh, it just recirculates, I'm sitting there thinking, well, that zaps your efficiency, right? But like having that, it's just like with a modulating motor, in HVAC equipment, it throttles down and uses less energy that way.
Yep.
And so that's really cool. And you're saying that's something that isn't standard. That's a thing that you have to know that you want. Yeah. Is that right?
So that is standard in the NRCR units themselves, but not all tankless water heaters have that.
Gotcha.
We're the only ones that have that low BTU mode built into that unit.
On that part of that technology is that you don't get, it's not 120 degrees right when you turn it on.
Sure.
It has to have a return back, and that's the benefit of keeping it nice and efficient. And it runs just about 100 degrees or so, a good lukewarm temp in the line. But if you're washing your hands, you don't have to wait, which we're all doing a lot more of now. And that's where this, with the whole COVID thing, that's where these are a really great feature, because you can put that on your sink that gets used the most for hand washing, and you can have lukewarm water or warm water right there immediately without having to wait.
That's cool. What's another? Let's say, is there someone has a Noritz that wasn't an NRCR? Was that right?
Yeah.
NRCR that wasn't that acronym. Is there a thing they can add on? Like, is that a matter of like? Because it sounds like the circuit board is what's doing that, or is it more complicated? Like you actually have to have an NRCR model, or can you add something on to if they got a Noritz that wasn't that? Does that question make sense?
For Recirc?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we do make a external Recirc pump.
Okay.
They have to have a dedicated line that can't be the crossover tier or anything like that. But if they do want to add Recirc into the house and they do have a dedicated line, we do have an external pump that just plugs into our unit, and then the unit controls the pump, the flow, all of that. It's something that they can add on to that.
Do you get that same modulating benefit that way, though?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah.
So even if it's not recirculating, all of your systems have that modulating BTU whatever, right?
Yeah, all of our units they modulate for what is being used at that time.
That's cool. What are some other tankless features that people... Ooh.
Everybody's going to modems and being able to look on their phone and see who's in the shower. Not who's in the shower. Sorry, that was bad. We had to go someplace, didn't we?
But where you took it, you're like, how do I take the episode off the rails?
Brakes.
Okay.
Brakes. Back up.
We do not condone putting cameras in your bathroom.
We can see when the tankless is being used. We can monitor the temperatures. We can adjust the temperatures.
That's a feature that's available. So what is that? Is that normal? Like, do all all of your tanklesses hook up to the Wi-Fi? Like what is this feature that you speak of?
So we have it's our Wi-Fi adapter.
Okay.
So something you would add on to the tankless. So the consumer can turn the temperature up and down. They can turn the unit on and off. Then it gives them a whole plethora of information about the unit. So it'll actually show them if there are any error codes, if there's something wrong with the unit. It'll show the burn hours, how many times it's ignited, how long it's been plugged in for, when the last time it was flushed, all these different things.
Does it keep track of that maintenance like you were talking about?
Yes.
And I'm assuming that, does it send you a push notification that says, hey, it's time to maintain it?
Yes, it does.
That sounds dope.
The other thing that you can do if you've got that teenage daughter that you think is showering way too long,
You shut the hot water off?
You can just
Yes, you
turn
can.
that baby off when you want, and they still have water, but it goes ice cold.
Yep.
That's actually cool. In my house, I have Alexas in all of the houses. So I think I would probably like give them a warning. Like I'd announce on the speakers, be like, hot water ends in 3 minutes. And then have them test me that first time and see. Anyway.
But through that Wi-Fi adapter too, they can see how much gas they've used per day. They can see how much hot water they've used per day through that. But it also, you as the installer, you can use that Wi-Fi adapter as a diagnostic tool. So if you had a customer call you and said, hey, my tankless isn't working, and they have that Wi-Fi adapter, you can actually dial in through your side of the app to see what error codes or anything that's going on with that unit. So you could actually have them turn on water, and you can actually walk through the unit without having to be on site and go through and see, is it producing the correct amount of. So they're saying, hey, we're not getting hot water. We're getting like lukewarm water. You can actually go into it and you can see the unit. Well, 120 degrees is leaving the unit. So it's not the unit, it's something else in your house. So we can send out a technician to take care of that part for you. So you could have a cross connection or something in the house.
And that is with customer permission. We don't have,
Correct. Yes.
We don't
Gotcha.
have, they have to give us access
Yes.
to
Gotcha.
Yeah. Our tech team too can dial into those units and do all those things too with the homeowner's permission to be able to do that. But it just makes it so much faster and easier to be able to diagnose if there is a problem with the unit or if it's something inside the house.
Sure. That's awesome. Any other features that someone needs to know of or look for in a tankless water heater? You talked about the heat exchangers. Are there different materials that heat exchangers are made of? Like, what do they need to look for with that?
Yeah. So with all of our units, we use 100% stainless steel heat exchangers. So that's why we can offer those 25-year warranties on that. So with our new NRCR, so our Easy 111, Easy 98, our Easy units that we had that had the 25-year warranty, we just introduced those NRCRs. So those heat exchangers and those NRCRs are actually 200% less corrosive when it comes to scale than the Easy ones that have a 25-year warranty. So those new heat exchangers are actually going to be moving into the Easy units because they'll hold up the hard water minerals better, which that's why we can offer these longer warranties, is because we know they're going to last a very, very long time. So if you are looking, you want to look for dual stainless steel, but stainless steel is not all made the same.
Okay.
So we're using a few different grades of stainless steel within our heat exchangers, like 316 austenite stainless steel, 304 stainless steel, where we have some of our competitors and things like that on there. They might use a stainless steel, but it might be a ferrite stainless steel that's not as high grade for that, so it's not going to hold up as better down the line. So it's really just looking at what they have in those heat exchangers.
Gotcha. Are there other metals besides stainless steel that manufacturers are using? Like
yeah, they're using, like, our non-condensing units all are copper heat exchangers.
Gotcha.
And so copper is where it had been for many, many, many years. Just over the last 5-6 years is when really, stainless steel has really taken over.
Yeah, I think mine might be a copper heat exchanger. Like
I'm sure it
it's
is.
probably 10, 12 years old.
Yeah, I'm sure
So,
it is.
which copper is a great conductor of heat.
Yep.
But it's very susceptible to scale buildup and damage from scale.
Look, I said I flush it every year.
You're awesome. That's the way to go.
You can't tap into my unit and see if I have or not. Okay, cool. Any other features? So you got stainless steel, you got that Wi-Fi thing, you got the recirculability, that modulating, whatever.
Oh, hey, when we have those high demands, like the house that has the 7 bathrooms,
Yep.
they make a little cable. We can install 2 of them side by side, link them together.
A cable.
There's a little electronic cable that communicates between the 2 tanklesses and says, hey, I need a little more boost, and the other one will kick
when you
on.
have multiple tanklesses.
To do multiple tanklesses, then there's a cable now that you can, you tie them together. And
So the 2 tanklesses are communicating.
Gotcha.
On
demand and how much flow and
how do you bring it up? Like in those situations where you have multiple tanklesses installed, are you piping those so that one tankless is doing one half of the house, or are they wired in series? Or not wired, electrician here. Are they piped in series? Like how are those things working when you put multiple in?
Well, it all depends really on that house and how it's plumbed.
Sure.
So a lot of like the newer homes that are larger, they are segregating off, this side of the house is on this water heater, this side of the house is on that water heater. But we have done like great big large homes where we've had 6 tankless to do a house because they have 20 bathrooms. So you'll see them quick connected together. You can do 6 together, and we can actually common vent all 6 and send it out with one vent, so you're not having 6 penetrations go out of the house. So
but is it like a giant vent?
Oh yeah, you're 8 inches going
it gets
out.
bigger.
It's like Mission Impossible can crawl through it and like get into your equipment room.
For just
Anyway.
2 of them, you're still at your normal 2 and
Yeah.
3 inch venting, and maybe 4.
So for my mind, is one tankless in the situation where they're plumbed together, is one preheating the water to the other? Is one constantly running and it only kicks on if you get the message saying like, hey, I need some help? Like how is it working?
Yeah, so they communicate with each other, but they also switch off all the time, X amount of hours of burn.
Yeah, every 8 hours.
Well, you have your primary and secondary ones.
Gotcha.
And so it just automatically switches back, so they get equal burn hours, which is not the case that we see on a lot of the tank water heaters that are in. Cold water comes in one, kind of preheats it, and then goes out the second one. That first one always gets used.
Gotcha.
And then those are the ones that we find we go in and replace a lot, is that first one. So the tanklesses are all modulated and calculated out. And then the flow rates, as one water heater can't keep up with it, it communicates, and then it opens it up and turns it on and sends the water through it as well.
Once the first one gets to 60% of its capacity, it'll kick on the second one, and then they both work together to...
They'll both work less hard.
Yeah, so if it goes 60%, it'll kick on the next one, then they'll be at 30%, and then they'll both work together. So we have a flow control valve that's letting water in and out of those units. So when you have 2 of them together, if you don't have that cord together, it's not letting them know that they're working together, and so it'll get a little weird. But if you have that cord connecting it, the first one will just shut off that water coming into that unit until first one gets to 60%, and then it'll kick on both, and then they'll both work.
That's cool.
For those that are watching there, Gail is over there, and I felt like I was back on the farm milking a cow when they're opening and closing.
Oh man. Okay. Well, we've talked a long time about tankless water heaters. Is there anything else that anyone wanted to mention before we wrap the show?
Well, one thing we talked about, we didn't kind of elaborate on, is the cost of tankless water heaters. It is more expensive to put a tankless water heater in, but one thing that the homeowner really has to look at is if I'm putting in a unit that has a 25-year warranty, if I'm going with a tank, I'm going to have to replace that tank probably 4 to 5 times the lifetime of that tankless. So it is more in the beginning, but over the years, it's going to save you tens of thousands of dollars.
That is
when it comes to
something
water
that
heating.
the people that say like, oh, a tankless water heater isn't that much more. You're not saving that much more money, by having a tankless water heater in. The biggest place that your savings is coming is you're not like continually replacing the unit itself. And so that's a good point as far as that cost there. So anything else? I think that's the show. That was a good episode. We went over a lot of stuff. Gail, you were our first like guest appearancer. That's not a word.
Guest appearance
totally
in
a
the
word.
word.
Yeah, like in the how was it? Tell me how.
Good.
Tell me how
good.
it was being on the show.
Yeah, I liked it.
You love the show.
Oh yeah,
You think it's amazing.
I watch it all the time.
No better podcast out there.
No.
Sweet. There you go. You heard it here, folks. That's the show. We'll be back next Tuesday with a new episode of In the House. I'd like to thank our guests, Dwayne, Scott, and Gail, for being here, and all the people behind the scenes that help to make the show possible. If you'd like to know more about Any Hour Services, please visit anyhourservices.com or Noritz at noritz.com if you'd like to know more about them. I've been your host, Mike Wilson, and you've been listening to In the House. See ya.